Well, welcome to the Chess Gym Radio Show. So glad you could be here. So glad I could be here. Chess Gym is a practical approach to spirituality, or a spiritual approach to practicality, any way you want to look at it. It's really about, we get together to share information, inspiration, ideas, concepts, to create windows of opportunity or doorways to walk through so that you can discover something else about yourself, about your life, about how the world works, and live something more fulfilling and more fun and more free, the qualities we're constantly looking for in our lives. We do that with different formats, discussions, conversations between individuals, and sometimes interviews. Today we're going to be having a conversation with Bill Takacs, a really good friend of mine, and someone who is actually a native of Ohio. Sorry about that, Bill. And became a permanent resident of Sarasota in 2013. He's a 1973 graduate of Kent State. Wow, 76 graduate of University of Toledo College of Law. Yes, he's one of those folks. He was employed at the Toledo law firm of Gallen, Takacs, and Boissoneault. I hope that was close enough, Bill. From 1978 to 2017, and serves the firm as its president and managing partner from 1991 to 2017. A long and strong career. He's currently a member of Unity of Sarasota. He serves as the president of the board of trustees. Although he's retired from his legal practice, Bill still provides consulting services. A little counseling services once in a while too, probably from a spiritual sense. And here in his retirements, Bill and his partner John enjoy travel internationally when they can during this time, and delivering meals for Meals on Wheels, and an active in 12-step recovery groups for quite some time. Wow, that's a mouthful, Bill. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Jim. It's sure good to be with you, and it's good to hear your voice. Always.
We have such a good time.
We sure do.
It's like having a cup of coffee, only talking about something in particular.
Well, yeah, and that's what we do best, right?
That's why we're here. And so an interesting topic for today. Bill and I see things a little bit different, so we thought we'd discuss an idea from the different places that we see it. And today's topic is divine order. Wow, that's another mouthful. It's kind of like one of those things that are talked about and said, and then everybody kind of wonders, well, what exactly does that mean? So there's that whole statement, everything is in divine order, huh, Bill?
Oh, that's absolutely the case. And you're absolutely right, Jim. You know, when it comes to divine order and trying to wrap your head around what it is, it reminds me of a landmark decision of the United States Supreme Court where the topic was, where the issue was pornography, of all things. And one of the most famous quotes from a United States Justice of the Supreme Court was when he said, "I really can't define it, but I can tell you when I see it." And that's kind of the way divine order works for me. You know, you ask me to put into words, I may not quite be able to describe it, but I sure do know it when I feel it.
That's a great statement, Bill. I gotta get that from you and write it down. I'll give you credit for it, because, you know, when we start talking about these kinds of things, there's the whole two sides of it. We're spiritual beings having human experience, so we have the sort of idealistic side, and then what we might call the realistic side, or the real world side. So it's like, wow, how do we get ourselves wrapped around this? Because it's such a very important part of our lives when we turn inward and begin to find that place of guidance or our own knowing within. And speaking of that, we've got here, we're divine order. Rather than trying to describe the divine, we could be here for the rest of the day. We each have our own. How do you connect with that divine part of you, the divine part of that which you connect to? What is the way that you kind of stay in touch with that flow of the divine and its inspiration?
Oh, that's great, Jim. That's a great question. And I think for me personally, there are several different ways that I commune or connect, starting with my waking moments, where I have a a ritual that I engage in every morning that takes me into prayer. It takes me into some inspirational reading and then into meditation. That is probably the most formal way that I make an effort to connect with the divine. But then there are different things, different activities, different functions where, I may not consciously set an intent to connect, but in doing things like the things that I enjoy most in life, I will come to that point where I realize, intentionally or not, I am in close contact and in communion with the spirit of my understanding. And it more often than not is when I find myself in that happy place where I know that life is good and that all is well. And it doesn't have to be a deliberate effort to set out to connect. It may just happen.
And it's really important, Bill, that it isn't a task. I too have that time in the morning, sort of as I'm waking up and haven't quite woken up, and I'm in that sort of in-between place where I'm naturally open to experiencing, let's just call it a deeper part of myself, or a more open part of myself, or more direct, a little bit of contemplation about something. A place I connect with the divine so easily is nature. Just when you say communing, it's like you're out there in the breeze and the trees, and a day like today here in Sarasota with the blue skies like it is, it's just amazing how we can just be who we are, where we are. And when we're open to allow that flow to occur, it does, and we are in that flow.
Yeah, if we had thought about it, we could have done this on the beach, right?
Or in a park, or any place else that we have that. Yeah, absolutely. And something to keep it really simple. This is just Jim. So as you said, it doesn't have to be specific and intentional. Coming from your heart, coming from unconditional love, opens and allows that flow to happen too.
That's absolutely true.
So with all that being said, though, Bill, as we're making our way through our lives, right? And we all have our own description or not. We all have our own connection or whatever it might seem to be. How can we, it's trusting that and following that. How have you come to allow yourself to rely on trusting divine order or allowing that flow to occur?
That's a great question, Jim. And I think the answer for me is that I probably arrived at that somehow in a convoluted fashion through the back door, because I remember a rather distant time in my life where I didn't connect, or didn't even try to connect, or even contemplate the feasibility of having a presence of spirit in my life. And putting it another way, I remember a time in my life where I saw myself as the master of my own destiny, and oftentimes the master of yours and everyone else's as well. And ultimately, that experience didn't play out so well for me. And it took a series of events, which led to enlightenment, to realize that there really was a power greater than me in the universe and in my life, and gradually and willingly, I opened myself up to the possibility of embracing it and letting it embrace me, and it's made all the difference in my world. So, my process somehow is through the back door, but that door is wide open now, and I get excited every single day at the possibilities that come my way.
It's interesting you would say that. I could relate in my mind what I was hearing myself say about my experience leading to that as I was dragged there kicking and screaming, so to speak, by my ego. It's like we have the lessons
Absolutely.
we have to learn, and we get challenges and opportunities, quote unquote, that carry us to our understanding, et cetera, et cetera. I just did all the things you shouldn't be doing long enough to where I had to do something about them or die. And I was led, fortunately, as were you, in different ways, to ways of being aware of that. So it's important to recognize that although we're talking about divine order, we're talking about meditation, communion, all these kinds of things, even today, look at where we are. Oh my God, what we've just been through in these last several months, what's going on with our country and the way that things are going back and forth and happening like they are. It's like a time where people are not exactly being dragged kicking and screaming, but they certainly are being impacted by all that's going on around them. And it's hard to trust. It's hard to rely on something when it seems like everything's kind of coming apart.
Oh, I think you're testing me at this point, Jim. I, I tease you only because you know how I feel about that. And
Yes.
yeah, I think
Yes.
you're absolutely right. And that's the human side of my existence. And it is a part, for me anyway. It's a part of who I have come here to be. And while I don't deny myself my humanity, I have to realize at the end of every adventure, the outcome isn't up to me. It's well in the hands of Spirit and not in the hands of Bill.
Yeah, I like to see it as a dance with God or a dance with
Mm-hmm.
Spirit. We're sometimes sometimes we're leading and sometimes Spirit's leading. The idea is to go with the flow, and I think it's really important though, because when you get into inspirational or spiritual ideas and discussions, you kind of tend to lean away from, we're right here in the middle of conditional reality, and our soul has
Mm-hmm.
come in to experience itself as a human experience here in this earthly realm, as they say. And so
Right.
it's really important for me to keep in touch with what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, my choices, my actions, and be aware, and then let that inspiration or let Spirit in to help guide or influence or make me aware of what I can do or need to do next. Of course, it's always up to me, but trusting the divine is one piece of the puzzle. But then we've got to do our part. We've got to show up and move our 2 feet.
There's absolutely no question. I like the analogy to the dance and going with the flow. That really resonates with me. But you're absolutely right. I mean, I look at my existence as always being at some point on this continuum where at one end of the spectrum is me as the human with my ego, and then the other end of the spectrum is me in communion with Spirit. And I just know now from experience that life is a heck of a lot better for me when I'm down at that Spirit end of the spectrum, and certainly not down at the ego end. It just works so much better when I do have faith, when I do have hope, and when I'm able to trust.
Yeah, that balance is tough, and I'll tell you, uh, I know that for me, when I do let what, even in quantum physics, measurable, that our spirit or that higher part of ourselves has influence or dominion, so to speak, not control, but it can influence how easily instead of being a mosh pit, it can be a waltz. It's a
Mm,
decision, not so much of just what we do. And let's make sure we say this, Bill. I try to make sure I say this in every show. Stuff's going to happen. I mean, things are going to happen in our lives that make it one heck of a lot more difficult to say, oh, everything's, okay and everything's in divine order. So let's just make sure we're saying out loud that we recognize that although we're saying we lean to that spiritual, for those of you who may